We have to think about the carbon we're using and the time involved and the money involved. So we have partnerships in maybe 8 different countries around the world where we support girls' education, women's empowerment, and reforestation, and also support Native communities. So we provide scholarships for girls, sanitary materials for young women, job opportunities in terms of skills training and that sort of thing for women around the world, microloan projects.
So who's we? Yeah.
The key here is you have partners in all these places who do the heavy lifting.
Okay.
I mean, we come in with the funding and the moral support and that sort of thing, but they're the ones who know their world, their land. We're trying to change people's lives. I think the only way to do that is really to have an encounter of some kind, whether us with our world, as on the learning tours, or with people in our situations, the sustainable centers, or me coming into somebody's classroom and showing my pictures and telling my stories and hoping some of that takes root. It's about living and learning and understanding why our world is the way it is.
Well, good morning to all of you faith processors in the room. Welcome. And good morning to all of you out there who are processing your faith, listening to this podcast. This is Faith in Process. Sunday's cool. I think that Sunday is cool, and so I'm trying to get everybody else to think the same. My name is Pastor Harry Jarrett. I'm the pastor here at Pleasant Valley Church of the Brethren. And today we are joined by someone whose life and ministry embody what it means to care deeply for God's world. Our guest today is David Radcliff, and he is the director of the New Community Project and the author of a Covenant Bible series called God's Earth, Our Home. Just a little background on David. His work is rooted really in the belief that creation care, justice, and faith belong together. My understanding is through your work with the New Community Project, you help support indigenous communities, you empower women and girls all across the globe, really. It's not just nationally, but it's internationally. As I did some searching online, you have helped plant millions of trees, like millions and millions of trees. You lead all kinds of learning tours that take people to places where the earth and its people are most vulnerable and wherever the Spirit seems to be stirring you. In our region, you also help with the Sustainable Living Center in Harrisonburg, which is a place where sustainable living isn't just theoretical, it's practiced, shared, and modeled for students, volunteers, and congregations like ours, which is why I'm really, really excited that you're here so you can help us figure out if we're not already. I'm new to the congregation, so I don't know how much people are involved, but if they're not, we're going to get them, and if they are, we're going to do more. You have also, I mentioned, done this Bible study called God's Earth, Our Home, where it invites Christians to discover the spiritual foundations of creation care and consider faithful stewardship. So you're just doing a lot everywhere. Welcome. Come on in. Have a seat. We got people arriving as we speak or as I speak. Welcome, welcome. All right. And you can, Miller, you can just leave that cracked so people can get in here if they want to. So David, I shared a lot about you. If you don't mind filling in the cracks, anything else you want to share with this group? And then I got some questions for you, of course, and we'll just chat a little bit this morning.
Well, thank you very much for that intro. Appreciate it, Harry. I am David, yes, and I live down in Blue Ridge, Virginia, just outside of Roanoke, about 10 miles east of Roanoke. I went to Bridgewater College right up the road here, and then went on to Bethany Seminary from there, and was a pastor for 10 years, actually, in the Church of the Brethren. But then I took a trip to Central America back in 1986, actually, and it was a trip organized by Heifer International, and it was called Hunger and Justice in Central America. I went down to Honduras for a week, Guatemala for a week, and saw things you really only hear about in Sunday school: refugees, poverty, war, our country not behaving well. So that kind of changed my life, actually, and set me on a different path. And I guess I could say that's why I'm here this morning, because of that experience that I had there at that point in my life.
Okay. Yeah, and you mentioned too, you corrected me, and I said you could correct me after the intro, which you didn't, but there's another sustainable living site somewhere?
We do. We have 2 sustainable living centers, one here up the road from you in Harrisonburg, and then up in Starksboro, Vermont. A guy who knew Tom Benevento, our director in Harrisonburg, way back 20 years ago or more in New York State at a camp that they met. And he wondered what Tom was doing these days and looked him up on the website and saw he was running a site for us here in Harrisonburg. And he said, that's what I want to do with my life. Yeah. And so we started, it's like our outpost in Vermont, you might say. So we have those two centers. And it kind of fits in with our method of operation, actually, Harry. I mentioned my trip to Central America and how that sort of changed my life. Well, we organized the learning tours, which you've already mentioned. And so a big part of our work, it is environmental care, it is peace through justice, we call it. But the third part we call experiential learning, which means putting us in contact with the world in ways we might not have otherwise. And so we take the learning tour groups to places around the world where we have partnerships. They're not service trips, they're not mission trips. It's about living and learning and understanding why our world is the way it is and why we are going to places to help others, and they're not maybe having the same dynamic of coming to help us, which a lot of people do, of course, but the idea that we have to experience things on a personal level. And so, along with the learning tours, which take people to see this world in a different perspective, we have the sustainable centers where people come, interns, volunteers, church groups, others come to the centers and volunteer and take part in what's going on there with food production and outreach to the marginalized and that sort of thing. And then the other part of our experiential learning is me traveling and talking. I probably talk 150 times a year.
Yeah, I saw your schedule. It's amazing.
The main audiences actually are schools and colleges and then congregations. So again, it's kind of being with people in the room as opposed to having a fancy social media presence or something like that. Mm-hmm. We're trying to change people's lives. I think the only way to do that is really to have an encounter of some kind, whether us with our world, as on the learning tours, or with people in our situations, the sustainable centers, or me coming into somebody's classroom and showing my pictures and telling my stories and hoping some of that takes root in the lives of young people, actually. So
now, if I remember correctly, typically, if you can, you ride your bicycle to where you speak, right?
Well, it depends
on myth?
Let's straighten out the myth a little bit. If I'm in a place where I have a bicycle, if I go to Missouri, for instance, I have a person that loans me a bicycle for the week,
right?
And I get there by train and plane and bus, whatever, to get to Missouri. But once I'm there, yes, I do try to bike where I can, when I can. Yeah. Same thing in Kansas, same thing in a couple other places where I go regularly. They know I'm a bicyclist guy, and they try to put me on a bicycle while I'm in their area. Coming up here today, I needed to bring a car. I did try to combine trips on this particular adventure up to your congregation. I'm going up to have a luncheon meeting after this, actually, and then tomorrow I've got a class at Bridgewater College. Anytime we're using our cars and vehicles, and this will get into our conversation later, I'm sure, as to what we need to be doing differently, we have to think about the carbon we're using and the time involved and the money involved, all these things, and try to combine things so that you're doing a bunch of different things in any given trip.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Shane Claiborne, who is, social justice and ecology and all those kinds of things, when he speaks, he gets invited all over everywhere. And part of his contract of coming somewhere is that the congregation, or wherever he's speaking, has to do something to offset the carbon footprint. Now,
I have thought about that myself, but I don't want to get disinvited some places because I set the bar too high for people.
Do that after this podcast. How about that? Obviously have a bunch of questions here, but we also want this to be very free form. And just so y'all who are in the classroom know, we're going to stop wherever we are in the conversation at 9:55. Grayson's going to let me know if I don't know myself. And then we're going to give y'all an opportunity to ask questions. All right? And normally we might bring people up here if we're doing a Zoom meeting so that whoever's coming in and the guests can see them. But today, we've got a mic here, so y'all can just speak normally from your chair, and we should be able to pick up your question, and then, of course, David, or if it's directed to me, will answer. So you talked a little bit about your experience and how that transformed you. Is that what motivated you or moved you to found New Community Project, or was it something else?
Well, just after that experience, I was hired to work for the Church of the Brethren General Board up in Elgin. And so I was the director of the Peace Office for 15 years, including environmental care and hunger relief. So I did that for 15 years, from 1989 until 2003. And then things changed there. I ended up resigning for various reasons, and we kind of started NCP, New Community Project, out of that transition, out of that experience.
Okay, so that's how you got to know Scott Holland.
Yes. Well,
He was here last week, and we talked about you in a favorable way.
I did not know Scott Holland was here last week. How about that?
Yes. So he comes in regularly on Zoom,
Oh.
and we talk about theopoetics and peace
Wow.
and all kinds of stuff. So he was here last week, and I mentioned you were coming.
I'm honored to be anywhere near where Scott Holland has been.
Oh,
So
well, yeah, he was on a screen
I got you.
here,
I
so
got
he
you.
doesn't actually sit in the seat yet, but I'm hoping to get him here. So my understanding is you don't just do stuff nationally or locally. NCP is involved in a wide range of global initiatives.
Yeah.
So just if you could share a little bit about some of the global things that are going on, and then, it's kind of you told me you do the website, you do all the things. So is it like just you going everywhere? Do you have a staff? Talk about how you balance all this. What support do you have? Those kinds of things.
Well, okay, yeah. So we have partnerships in maybe 8 different countries around the world where we support girls' education, women's empowerment, and reforestation, and also support Native communities in some of those places, depending on the situation, of course. So we provide scholarships for girls, sanitary materials for young women, job opportunities in terms of skills training and that sort of thing for women around the world, microloan projects. And we work, and when you say it's just me,
So who's we? Yeah,
the key
exactly.
here is you have partners in all these places who do the heavy lifting.
Okay.
I mean, we come in with the funding and the moral support and that sort of thing, but they're the ones who know their world, their land. I mean, we work in South Sudan, in Congo, in Rwanda, Malawi, those are the African sites, and then in Nepal, in Myanmar, and Borneo in Asia, and then in the Ecuadorian Amazon, in South America, of course, and then with the Gwich'in up in Arctic Village, Alaska, 150 miles north of the Arctic Circle, and then also with the Dene or Navajo out in New Mexico.
Oh, wow.
So those are some of our partner areas, and some of those have money flowing to them. We probably put out $250,000, $300,000 a year for these various programs that are going on that we're supporting. But with the Native communities, we're not so much heavy into the financial outlay as supporting them with what they're trying to do and what they're trying to promote in terms of preservation, conservation, that sort of thing. We did send $500 last week to Delio, our Siona shaman guide and friend in the Ecuadorian Amazon, because he wants to be patrolling his part of the world down there to keep it safe from illegal gold mining, palm oil production, petroleum prospecting, all these kinds of things. So we sent him money for his boat, basically, to buy the gas, to be on patrol, essentially. So it's not a huge financial investment.
But it correlates to something significant.
It correlates to something significant, and it's what they are needing. It's not, they don't really need the big financial outlays for the women's projects, girls' projects, that sort of thing, which we do in other places. But we have also trying to keep the Native community strong because they're on the front lines of defending some of our last wild places.
Yeah.
And they've been managing these places for eons, thousands of years actually. And so we have these ongoing relationships. We're not a once and done kind of organization.
And how long has this been going on for?
22 years,
Right.
New Community Project has. And so in the Amazon, for instance, we had a shamanic friend named Aurelio, who Kofan is his tribal group, and he passed away about 8 months ago. But before he died, we helped his grandson begin to get training to learn from other shamans in the area, to learn from his own grandfather there about how to carry on the shamanic work in terms of the wonder and diversity of the forest, the medicinal plants, and sort of the spirituality of the forest. And so we have provided tangible support in some cases for Native communities, but most of the tangible support financially goes abroad beyond the Americas, let's say, to Africa and Asia.
Sure. Now, I'm going to push you on this. So you're using we and our. So is this like a royal we, which means you?
When I say
Or
we, I mean our
who's
network.
we?
I mean, New Community Project, we have 4 full-time people, a couple of part-time people
Okay.
working on our
That-
staff.
that are working kind of
Well,
in the
and
staff.
Tom up in Harrisonburg, Pete up in Vermont,
All right.
and Kathy in Harrisonburg running our Fresh Veggies program. And then we have myself, and then we have a couple of other people doing part-time work for us.
So the Sustainable Living Centers are kind of, they're staff people that are doing this.
Exactly. And again, the we also includes all the people in this room who are people who are part of our network, let's say. And so we have about 11,000 people in our network around the country.
Wow.
And they're the ones that keep our ship afloat.
Sure.
I mean, donations.
You can't do all this on your own, right?
Well, no.
Yeah.
Well, morally you can't, and just emotionally and those other
Yeah.
ways you can't. You need to feel like you're in this game with other people who share your concerns about this world and who are also acting on their concerns to make this world
Sure.
a better place. So that part, but also the material support. We had previously been getting grants from the U.S. government, not USAID, but, well, I will say something about USAID in a moment, but U.S. Department of Agriculture and some others, but all that's being retracted at the moment. And so we're having to reconfigure how we're going to do some of the things
So how
we've been
much
doing.
did you lose?
I probably don't know the answer
ish.
to that directly. I would say probably some tens of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
I will just back to the USAID for a second. We work in Nepal with an anti-trafficking organization, Shakti Samuha. They're helping young women who've been trafficked into the sex trade recuperate themselves when they come back to Nepal. Well, we were there last January. The cuts were coming down from USAID. Our partner lost $177,000 and half of their staff with these cuts from USAID. I'm all for efficiency, and I think our little organization and your congregation are some of the most efficient people in the world, probably, in terms of making the best use of the money you've got. But otherwise, it seems cold-hearted and mean-spirited, really what's been going on around this world. So that's who the we is. It's all of us here in our network, and also our partners abroad. Our partner in Nepal said, "You're our dream partner." Because we don't have one-year contracts. We're there with them for the long haul. We take on emergency needs they have, where other groups don't have the latitude to step in and do something that isn't in their budget. We found ways. We're raising money this fall, actually, for another organization cut their aid to our friends in Nepal this past September, a key shelter that they run to help these girls recuperate. And so they said, it's crisis. I said, well, how much are you going to take? They said, we need $15,875 to keep this shelter open for the next year.
Well, at least they'd done their homework, I guess.
They had done their homework, and we've already exceeded that.
That's
That's
great.
our fall campaign. We have a campaign every fall, and so we're already probably at $20,000, which will not only provide the bare bones staff, but also build out their program, which they've been used to having, but they were going to have to cut it short. So,
Yeah. I went onto your website that you told me that you sort of manage. The amount of information there and the amount of things that y'all are able to accomplish is remarkable, to say the least, really. It's somewhat like drinking from a fire hose. You go through that stuff, it's like, whoa.
just pick your battle, pick your cause, and find the thing that sort of compels you.
Exactly.
That's really what I say to everybody.
Pick a tab on the menu and just stay there, right?
I had a young woman up at Dartmouth College a couple of years ago. She'd heard me in a couple of sessions, and she said, I've heard all this stuff now, and I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by all this. I said, find the thing you care about and dig deep. Find the thing you care about and dig deep, and don't be afraid of what you find.
Right.
So that's sort of got to find the thing that kind of connects with us on an inner level. In fact, we actually use the 4-H model a little bit. 4-H, head, heart, hands, and health. So you probably in that in high school or earlier. But we turn it around to start with heart. We feel like you've got to affect people on an inner level. And then after they've been kind of compelled or found themselves touched in some way or angered in some way by something that's going on around them, then you think about the head. Well, what more information do we need? Then you think about the hands. Well, what can I do with what I know? And then you think about the health, which is like this common vision toward which we're moving, the better world that God is calling us all toward.
Right.
So that's our little 4-H.
Well, that's why you push the learning tours, and at least I think, sounds like you push the learning tours, and I'm pushing maybe the sustainable living center.
Yes.
And I would say it's a sustainable learning center.
It is all of that.
Right?
Yes.
In Harrisonburg. Obviously, we're just scratching the surface, so I encourage everyone that is here and might be listening to go to their website and learn more. But today, if we had to choose, it sounds like the first thing we need to do is either go on a learning tour or head down to Harrisonburg and check out the Living Center and learn a little bit there, get connected there a little bit. So which one would you recommend first?
Okay. I hate to be so shamelessly self-promotional to say we've got the things you need.
But I'm asking you to be.
Well, I understand that. I appreciate that. The main thing is for each of us in the room here and on who's listening to the podcast here to think about that thing that really compels, angers, excites them, and then think about how can I move forward in that thing that I want to do something about in this world.
Because you have a learning tour in almost all of those places.
We have learning tours in all the places we have partnerships. So going on learning tours, of course, I think an exceptional experience because it puts you in a place to see the world differently. to see yourself differently, and then to say, where is God calling me from that?
Right.
So, yeah, of course, I would promote the learning.
Or just to be transformed there and then do something here, right?
Yeah, that's really the thing. To bring that back home with you and see where that takes you, where God is leading you from that experience. And I would say the same thing about our sustainable centers. It's hard to spend even a few hours on one of our sustainable centers and not be just sort of awed by the possibilities and compelled by the possibilities of what any of us can do. And then, so
just try to find some manageable bite and
exactly right.
Because I think it can be overwhelming. It sounds like, when I first invited you, I thought, okay, we're just going to talk about planting trees and carbon footprint, but what you're doing is far more vast than that.
Well, we're looking for a change of heart, really. We're looking, as I said,
impacting people's lives.
That's exactly our whole point.
The trafficking and the girls, and all the things that you're doing. It ain't just about trees. It's about trees, but it's about much more than that.
Well, we're losing 18 football fields of tropical forest per minute around the world. 18 football fields of tropical forest per minute around the world.
Wow.
So I'm saying it is kind of about trees. Not that that's all that we do,
right?
But we cannot avoid thinking about trees. And mangrove forests around the world, we've already lost a quarter of them, and they're just like miracle trees for coastal areas, for all of the services they provide. And of course, forests are habitat for all kinds of living things. We know that Jane Goodall just passed, and may she rest in peace. I mean, what a marvelous person, both for women in the sciences and for the scientific method of just learning by observation.
Well, she brought so much awareness.
She taught the world about other ways of doing things. But the other thing is that she sort of was specialized in chimpanzees, we all remember. Well, since she started her work in 1960, there are half as many chimpanzees in the world.
Oh, wow.
Because of mostly habitat loss. So we've got our work cut out for us in any area you want to pick, whether it's women and girls around the world, whether it's the forests around the world, whether it's the native communities, whether it's ourselves and our own consumption patterns in the United States. I mean, we've got our work cut out for us.
Yeah, I like mangroves because I'm a fisher person.
How about that?
And so mangroves are like are they like the lung? Are they like the liver of
They're all of the above. They stabilize coastal areas against sea level rise. They also are habitat for things above and below water. They sequester carbon at 4 times the rate of rainforest, amazingly.
Amazingly. And they filter water.
And they filter water, filter air, and also if you've got an incoming tsunami or a cyclone, they take 75% of the energy out of the waves oncoming storm surge.
Yeah.
Because they're just like runaway truck ramps on the West Virginia Turnpike. That's how I describe a mangrove when you've got something coming at you like that.
And fish like them too.
And fish do like
really
them.
Nice.
Fish, you catch really nice fish.
And lures get stuck in them quite a bit. All right, so we're going to stop now. There's so much more you could say, but these people, thank you for coming, have questions. So I think you have questions. If not, Grayson has questions. What questions do you have for David or myself about anything that we've talked about or about something else that we didn't talk about?
Okay.
Millard has a question.
Please.
Come on, Millard.
So, David, what I'm hearing from you is that you have a very holistic notion of creation.
Trying to.
So, how did you come to that? Now, I know you had that experience down in Honduras and Guatemala, but we've been to Haiti.
I understand.
Now, and maybe that had some formative effects, but nevertheless, you made this transition from how we usually understand Christianity, which is my relationship with God, and I'm going to go to heaven, all that, to this notion that apparently of God pervading all of creation and the need for the care of the whole. So how did you make that?
I think there are a couple of things. I grew up down in Blue Ridge outside of Roanoke, inside of the Blue Ridge Parkway. So in the mountains there, I had a kind of an affinity or kind of a realization of the wonder of creation just from being growing up where I grew up. My dad, every night when he'd have the prayer for our meal, he would end his prayer with, "And thank you, God, for the beauties of nature," just as part of our daily prayer time as a family at supper time. I grew up, kind of came to being a consciousness in the 60s and 70s, and that sort of stuff was breaking out about then, that sort of consciousness about the world around us. So I had some sense of that at that point, but also probably the mid to late 70s, I began to think that this is really a justice issue. What we are doing to God's creation is not fair. I mean, there's 70% fewer wild creatures on the earth than when I was in high school. I already told you about the chimpanzees and Jane Goodall, and how many fewer of those are in this world. What we are doing to this earth is not fair to the earth. So it almost became a justice issue. And also, it's a spiritual issue in the sense that Jesus said, you can't worship God and things. You can't worship God and mammon. There's a spiritual issue there that if we're so dependent on, and this comes around to have ecological principles. I think he was thinking of it as a spiritual issue primarily, that you've got to have your life in line with God's precepts rather than focusing yourself on what we drink, drive, dress, and drool over. I mean, those things can't be what captivate our souls, but they are what captivate our souls.
That's not the first time you've said that.
Which do captivate our souls. So we have to find a way to fight that battle. But also, I don't know if Jesus had foresight here, but what we have done in terms of our rapacious consumption, there's now more human edifice on earth than there is living matter. Talking about cars, roads, buildings, all that stuff. 1 trillion tons of human matter, created matter. I think that's right. Don't quote me on that number, but I think that's right. Maybe
we'll fact check.
But
you later.
You can, and I'm happy for you too, because I'd like to be corrected. But more, I do know that there's more of the stuff that we have built than the stuff that God has built.
Yeah.
You might say, in terms of the natural world. In that same period of time, when there's 70% fewer wild creatures on the earth, there are twice as many humans. And so, in fact, God, back in the creation story, as I said in my book, I think, which I don't call it a book. It felt like a study guide to me, but they call it a book at Brethren Press, so I'm going to go with that. Anyway, God gives the humans the commandment to be fruitful and multiply. God also says that to the other living things. Be fruitful and multiply, which we conveniently avoid. We've done much better at it than they have done. So, I forget what your question was, but
well, I'm gonna.
How you came to this?
How I came. Well, I've just described it to you. I think.
Well,
I think
and I know you didn't ask me, but I'm going to jump in on
Please.
this. I was listening to a podcast, actually, Homebrewed Christianity, that Millard turned me on to, which is very fun. And it was a podcast about ecology and creation care with Brian McLaren. And one of the things that they said was that we need to change our paradigm and our motivation. In other words, we need to not be about saving creation, but we need to be about doing things so that creation can save us. Because if we continue in this direction, we're going to die. It's not going to be good. And so we need to realize that we're not saving creation necessarily. We need to start thinking about doing things so that creation can do what it was created to do, which is to sustain all life, which includes us too. Because if we continue in this direction, it's just probably not going to be a great thing.
So there is a self-serving motive here, yes. We have to think about how we take care of Earth if Earth wants to take care of us.
Yes. And I think I sent you that article about creation rising up against being used for extraction. At a certain point, we see in creation, in nature, that at a certain point it just says, no, we're not doing this anymore. And rivers either flood or dry up and,
And it's coming back on the poor of the world, first and worst.
Yeah.
We have a partnership in Malawi where we support girls' education, women's projects, and also a lot of reforestation in Malawi. Every time I've been there, I think 3 times I've been there, they've been down to 1 meal a day because of climate change. They're agricultural communities. They don't have a backup plan in terms of where to get. We get our, if your fields dry up here in the Shenandoah Valley, that's one thing. We got other ways to get food on our table.
Yeah, if I go fishing and I don't catch fish.
Yes.
Just go
you
somewhere
won't go. You'll
Exactly.
find a way to get your fish, however. So they're unable to have a rural economy that's functioning for them. And they're not causing climate change. So this is the human justice issue. Their carbon footprint is 0.3 tons per person per year. Ours is 17. So the rich world, the consuming world, is creating climate change, and it's a poor world that is currently paying the price for it, and will pay it more severely. Of course, we all will eventually.
Yeah, again, it's empire, it's pharaoh, it's that whole thing, extracting. Good question. Anybody else? Anybody else have a question?
I've got a question. Yeah, so this is Grayson, by the way. So you work with a lot of different folks around the world from different cultures and even different, it sounds like, faith backgrounds as well. How do you take into account these cultures and places that these other folks you're working with are coming from to sort of incorporate that into your solutions to help them?
Well, there's one way to think about it, just what you said at the end there. We don't consider them our solutions to help them. We're there listening and learning from them. I know Tom Benevento from our Harrisonburg site here spent 3 months in Malawi last winter, and he'd been there one other time before. And what he does is he goes to learn from them and listen to them. What do you remember from your past? What did your elders teach you about the best way to do farming? Rather than the state ag programs that have come in and you got using chemicals and all this pesticides and all this other stuff. What do you remember? What do you recall from your way? And also what then fits in with your landscape here, with the kind of soil you have and other kinds of processes? You get their input on this whole thing, and then you work together collaboratively with them. He's a specialist. I mean, Tom knows this stuff back and forth, but he also knows they know things he doesn't know from their life and world. And we do that with all of our programs, not just the environmental piece, but also with the women's projects, girls' projects, whatever. We're listening to our partners in these places. I'll tell you one little sad story here about a South Korean Christian who visited an orphanage. The orphanage had to move from South Sudan to Uganda because of the war going on in South Sudan. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago, and it was there in Uganda now. I had visited in South Sudan when it was there, and now we stopped to visit it on our way to a refugee camp in Uganda. We stopped to visit, and he told us that a South Korean Christian man had come there, and the day he visited, just sort of happenstance that he visited this orphanage, he saw the children holding a worship service under a tree. Which, people around the world do all kinds of interesting things under trees, That's kind of a fine location for things. But he felt sorry for them, so he spent $10,000 of his own money and a lot of his own labor, because he was a construction guy in South Korea, building a chapel for them. Well, we got the tour of the place by the pastor who was showing us around, and he showed us the dormitories, which they had tent dormitories and tent classrooms, and then they had the chapel. I said, Pastor, before all this happened, if someone would have come to you and said, I've got $10,000, what's your highest priority for what you'd like to have it used for here? The pastor said, dormitories. And so here people coming in and doing what they think is best is almost a recipe for disaster. The disrespect it shows, to me, it makes me want to weep when I hear stories like this, the disrespect for not even asking. But then also, you might say the misused funds, which could have been gone for something that the school really needed. So we always try to go in with that approach. We're listening and learning, and humbly, we come in from the outside. We've got the money, kind of. You could theoretically call the shots on these things. I mean, and I've heard, again, in South Sudan, someone said, a church worker there told me one time, when I see people come in here, they listen to one person in the community, they get their idea for what they want to do, by what that one person said. He said, I know it's like pouring money down a rat hole. But what can I say? They're making the decision themselves, and they've got the money to make the power, you might say. So being aware of the power dynamic in all these things is really, really critical, actually.
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about, we need to, in our position, we really need to step away from a colonial mindset, right?
We do.
And that whole colonialism, and we know best, and we're the authorities, and we've got the money. So, yeah, great insights. Anybody else? I need a 5 or 6 minute answer and a 30-second question. Anybody got one?
That was really interesting, what you said about going to these areas and actually trying to learn from them. That strikes me as being extremely empowering to these places. And we learn too. That sounds like the best of all worlds to me.
So, since nobody's asking, I'll ask one final question. It would be very easy for people, I think, to be filled with despair, to feel overwhelmed, to feel like, oh my gosh, if we're in this situation and we know we're headed and continue to head in that direction, how can anything I do help? How do you manage for people like us who want to do something to not end up despairing, to maintain hope, to get involved? How do we navigate that? How do you navigate that?
We have a little bit of a mantra. We call it aim high, look low. And that means you can't avoid the big picture things. I mean, these things are coming down the pike at us, whether it's climate change or whether it's resource depletion of all kinds, whether it's decimation of other kind of wild things on the earth, etc. So you have to be aware of the big picture things to help that, I'm just saying for myself, help inform me and help inform our organization about the things that are going on that really have to command our attention. But then you look low to find the reasons for hope. You look at that women's project in Malawi, you look at that reforestation thing. We're the main reforestation agent in a whole region of South Sudan, New Community Project. It shouldn't be that way. I'm sad about that, actually. that somebody like us is carrying the heavy load in a place like South Sudan that needs huge amounts of reforestation. But anyway, you look below to find what our 3 reforestation sites are doing there, what these young girls in Nepal who are walking 7 hours round trip up and down a mountain every day to get to school because we gave them the $200 they needed to pay their tuition each. Now we're supporting 27 of them. So they're doing their part. They're going 7 hours up and down a mountain every day, attacked by monkeys along the way. Did I mention that? They see a young girl, a schoolgirl with a backpack, they think granola bars. These girls got no granola bars, but the monkeys don't know that.
Oh, wow.
So for these young people that are willing to do that kind of thing in that kind of situation, that's where you find your hopefulness. Yes, sir.
Oh, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So
quick.
I know we got about 2 minutes left.
Oh, I
so-
think go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, James.
All right, so I know I got about 15-second questions, so you about a minute left to be able to answer. Last year, and thank you for coming to Roundtable, which is the Regional Youth Conference, Steve Spire and IYC, Interdistrict Youth Cabinet, and thank you for coming and speaking at Roundtable. Did you have anyone contact you after Roundtable after last year?
Oh, well, I had some people, of course, get on. When I have my mailing list everywhere I go, and so some kids sign up on the mailing list. I've got them in our network, you might say. We certainly got a big offering from Roundtable for the Girls Project. I think it was over $1,000. I think maybe for the Chipon girls, I don't remember exactly, but that was a nice follow-up thing. You know, you don't hear a lot from people individually, even if they're on the mailing list or email list. I don't get a response from them, but I have found by the time you get to middle school and high school, often it looks, or even college, it seems like they're not really paying attention, or they're not really, you don't get much of an emotional response from people or follow-up kinds of things. But I have realized over the years that things are sinking in that you didn't have an idea were happening that
Planting
way.
seeds.
I've had young people come up to me a couple of years later and say, I remember that day you were in our classroom. And that made a difference. That made a difference to me. Wanted you to know that. And so you're planting the seeds, just like the parable of the sower. We can't control what happens to the seeds. Our job is to sow them.
Well, thank you. I think we'll stop with that. That is a great thing to stop with. So, David, my goodness, thank you for coming. I think that we would love to have you back if you happen to be in the area. And thank you all for being here. This was great. Thank you for your questions. Just so everybody knows, next week, it's another episode of Millard and Me.
Okay.
It is. Millard and me are going to talk, and it is going to be either profound or provocative, or both. One of the two or three. So I look forward to that. David, anything you want to finish up saying at all to us? I think what you said was great. But any final word?
Well, I'll just say that last Sunday or 2 Sundays ago up at Elizabethtown, I preached with the title, All You Need Is Love. And to getting back to your question about keeping hope alive. Exactly. But don't spare us, okay? But I preached on All You Need Is Love. And what I said in that sermon was, I used Paul's 1 Corinthians 13, and I also used, of course, the Beatles. I did see Paul McCartney in concert. My son took me about a month ago in Des Moines, but that's another side note. But I was saying that we don't abandon that which we love. That's why all we need is love. Even if things don't look that promising in the world around us, whoever it is, whatever it is, if we care about it deeply, we don't abandon it. And so that's what I would leave you with.
Amen. Amen. And I won't sing the second verse. Don't worry about it. All right. Thank you all very much. We are going to head to church now, so thank you all. Thank you everybody who's listening, and if you ever want to come, we're here live every Sunday at 9:30 a.m. at Pleasant Valley Church of the Brethren here in Weir's Cave. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Faith in Process. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode about our responsibilities to creation and to each other. Today's speakers were your host, Pastor Harry Jarrett, and founder of the New Community Project, David Radcliff. They discussed David's work in supporting communities around the world as those communities develop strategies to care for creation and for themselves. As this episode is released, Harry is talking to Milton about Alfred North Whitehead, a British mathematician and philosopher who became famous in the early 1900s for his theory of process philosophy. Whitehead's process philosophy described reality as a web of constantly changing relationships rather than fixed points and facts. That episode will be airing on December 14th. Join us in person on December 14th to hear Harry talk with Lonnie Yoder about finding the divine even in the midst of trauma. Don't worry, the Millard and Me episode will still be waiting for you online afterwards. To find our schedule of upcoming speakers, go online to pleasantvalleyalive.org and navigate to the top menu, then select Adult Ministries, then choose Faith in Process. You could do all of that, or you could just follow the link in this episode description. If you are a young adult looking for a faith community in the Shenandoah Valley, come join us at 9:30 this Sunday at Pleasant Valley Church of the Brethren to be a part of the conversation. Worship follows Sunday school at 10:30. This group is intended for adults from age 19 to 35, but if you fall outside that age range, thank you for listening. You're still welcome to join us in person, or you can join one of our other Sunday school groups, which you can find more information on at pleasantvalleyalive.org. Thanks again for listening.